Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Revival of America podcast. This is Jenny. I'm the owner and the host of the Revival of America. This afternoon, guys, we have Derek Johnson in the house. This is a new one, but he is on the East Coast and he's got some things to do. So we had to push up the show for him today. Instead of 6:30, we're going to be doing it now. We would normally have John Baxter right now, but we're going to get John Baxter on later in this week. So please, everybody, you guys know the drill, how it goes with Derek. He just he gives us the updates on what's going on. If we can get to some questions, we will, but otherwise, Derek gives us a lot of great information through the course of his conversation here with us. So please, everybody, be patient and sit back, enjoy. And like I said, if we can get some questions, he has to be out of here at 5:30 on the dot Eastern time. So it's going to be probably right there at the 90-minute mark that we typically normally do. Also, everybody, please, we are being listened to in 150 countries. If you want to listen to the replay or send it to a family or friend, please feel free to follow the podcast on the podcast host or my social medias. They are iHeartRadio, Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Google, Breaker, PocketCast, Podbean, Riverside, Amazon Music. Social medias are Jenny Jeread Facebook, at Jenny_Jeread X, at J Jeread Rumble, at J Jeread True Social, at J Jeread Instagram, The Revival of America right here on Telegram, The Revival of America over on YouTube. Also, everybody, if you get a message saying somebody impersonating me or any of my guests, know that it's not me or any of my guests. We will not randomly reach out to you and ask you anything about a scare event, financial, crypto, any of that. Please block them, report them, and let me know so I can make sure they're not in any of my channels or chats, because you guys know me, I don't deal with bullshit. I get rid of it real quickly. No time for that, guys. We are on the brink of this, and we're in it, everybody. But be excited. Stay out of the noise. Stay out of all the BS propaganda out there, because that's what it is, noise and propaganda. We are winning. There's more winning than there is losing. So please just be excited and, just follow the right people, everybody, because as many of us say, a lot of these people are falling by the wayside, and we're seeing it more and more on a daily basis. So please, guys, be careful. I'm not going to take too much of time doing my PSAs. I'm going to say one more thing, and then we're going to go right into it with Derek, because he is on a time constraint today. But I also want to let everybody know we have a new addition to the Revival of America podcast. If you are over on X and you hear me or Rubber Duck or anybody that you might be in some of these spaces with me on, Dr. James B. Joyce, he's a very special person in this movement when it comes to the technology. He's going to be coming on, educating us on the truth of the technology, where a lot of people are looking in the wrong spaces and they're getting very fearful of the technology that's coming out and what actually we have had in the past. But he's going to explain a lot of that. He's been a part of the building of some of this technology, and he's going to tell you some of the people that he's been working with alongside of him. So it's going to be a great. It's not just going to be one podcast, everybody. It's going to be a series of episodes, kind of like Derek Johnson and many of my guests. So he's going to educate us, because there's a lot. There's a lot more positive when it comes to this technology and what he's going to explain to us than what we are being told. So with that, everybody, Derek is in the house. I want to welcome Derek. How are you, Derek?
Well, I'm doing all right.
Where are you at? You said you're on the East Coast. You're on Eastern time.
I'm in South Florida.
Oh, what you doing? You playing, or you on a so-called business trip?
Probably a little bit of both, but
Well, good
yeah.
for you. You can go say hi to our great president, Donald J. Trump. Well, he's probably not there. He's probably in Washington, D.C.
He's not been in Washington much out of 10 years, but you know,
Well, for the public to see, you know what I'm talking about.
for the public to fake consume, yeah, he's been there 17 times. But
Yes, I remember. I remember him saying that on one of his press conferences. That was see right there, guys. If that's not telling you, I don't know what is. How you doing, Derek? What do you want to grace us with today? There's a lot of stuff going on out there, man, but it's a wild west out there with a lot of these panicans and propagandists and all that fun stuff. But do you want to talk about the Iraqi situation? I thought that was pretty cool what happened over there.
I haven't got to see much anything. The place I'm staying at has zero internet, which has been perfect for a few days. So I'm
So
kind
then
of in
that's
the
probably why you come up as a number on my phone and not your name, because normally I have you as Derek Johnson, and it just came up as a number. That's why I'm like, is this Derek?
I have a few numbers, but that's strategic as well. But um, yeah, I mean, I've just been kind of in the dark the last couple of days on purpose, but there's nothing it's nothing new per
Well,
se.
sometimes it's a good thing, and you've been going through a lot. So I am glad that you are doing that, and I hope you have a great time down there in Florida, whatever it is that you do. So, do you want to touch on anything specific? Because you're always good at you got a lot of stuff to give us.
Well, I mean, it's I've got a few friends here that I've been talking to exclusively about whatever questions they have, and and it's kind of overwhelming naturally for anybody out there that can't consume a lot of information at one time. But like I always remind them that I give everybody the 40,000 foot view. I can intricately zoom in on any topic. But in operations at this scale, I mean, it's everything is normal, and then also we're still in the 45-47. The 47 is nowhere near complete. Now that doesn't mean that it's going to be doomsday till January the 20th, 2029, but it all goes back to what people are watching and listening and who they're listening to, because uh, there's it's like this massive buffet out there, and everyone who says, "Hey, don't go listening to this broccoli and this Brussels sprout and this carrot over here," they're no good. That's the very ones they go listen to, and it's like everybody gets offended when you tell them not to listen to certain some people, but everybody wants their own buffet. Everybody wants to pick and choose based on also temperament, tone, delivery, and all those things. And so week in and week out, I remind everybody that you only need to know one plan, and that's President Trump's plan. It's not secretive. Anything that was done in clandestine or covert will be made public, because anything done in secrecy that remains in secrecy is not ever a good thing. But things that are done clandestinely or covertly will be made public. Um, so, I was talking to my friends yesterday about the four doomsday planes that were up at one time. I have a buddy that I don't ever tell his name, but he listens to your podcast, and he'll be texting me as soon as he knows I'm talking about him. Uh, but he was a contractor for the Doomsday Plane, and we always text, especially when two were in the sky. Two in the sky is a big deal. Three in the sky is eye popping. Four in the sky at one time means some heavy, what is going down. So, I was telling them a few years ago, it's been 2 or 3 years back. I got to go back and look at my notes and my pictures, but um, there were four doomsday planes up at one time following each other, and they were all out in Washington State, and they were flying westward. Um, and, I tell people that, like the Iran nuclear facilities is not something that would have happened in the last year or two, well, last year, and then move your way to right now. Now, the average American, they need to think some of that is real, because you need to have a productive president. You need to have a proactive president. You need to have a president who gets things done. But in reality, a operation such as a nuclear facilities being bombed, and then also getting in there, making sure mission accomplished, making sure that everything went successfully, getting the IEAE in there, uh, getting all the different experts in there, getting all those people in there, and assuring that this mission was accomplished, and also they've been destroyed. That wouldn't have done it. That now we have the capability to do it in a year's time, But the reality around it is more than likely those doomsday planes were operations around the time that we would have been actually taking out those nuclear facilities, because that's what the doomsday plane is. It can withstand a nuclear blast. And then you put them up for precaution measures. It's not always necessarily that, that there was an actual threat to the president through the Secretary of War, the Secretary of State, the Vice President, but it's precautionary, right? So that's why they would have been on radar as well, flying at one time with call signs. They wouldn't have been training, so you'll have veterans out there. God love them, but people, when they hear one veteran talking about a bunch of veterans, or a bunch of veterans talking about one, as I had 4 years ago, a few ankle biters come out, people gravitate to that because it's come to your attention. Versus going, hey, there's 6% of America are veterans now. So there's literally millions of veterans. All right. And then it goes back to what was their expertise and what did they do in the military? How much did they pay attention? Do they know any of their regulations? Can they quote any of their regulations? Can they quote the laws around those regulations? Can they quote military laws? Not many can. So when it comes down to like what I talk about, that's why there's only people like Lieutenant Colonel Bosey, Colonel Sellers, Major Jim O'Connor, Lieutenant Colonel Lennox. There's only a few, because the time you boil down that of the people who want to do it, who want a name and a face, who also want to deal with all the other things that come our way, our setting's a little different than a civilian. So then you get an array of different things you got to deal with, and depending on your clout and your rank and your status, uh, there's so many things, and that's why there's not many veterans talking about this in the kind of way that they should be. I would have never dreamt we would have gotten in history to where we'd have whatever percent of Americans, but pick a number where they go, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Oh, that's BS and that's hogwash. When historians have done this for years, and most historians are not veterans. So who would ever dream we get to history where people wouldn't want to know that? And let's just say people. Let's go on down intricately. Patriots, Republicans, conservatives, why wouldn't they want to know that President Trump is the face and image and brand of the most iconic, biblical, monumental, historical operation known to man using military strategies? And that's why I was posting earlier, straight out of the military government handbook, um, about what does a military government look like, and then the occupation of a nation and why it's lawful. And it mentions Tyler versus DeFreeze, which is Supreme Court, um, clarifying that that we have the authority to do so, and then it tells you all the different variables. So and what's taking place, it's a lot of variables, and that's why I tell people all the time, you can't necessarily think wrong as long as you're thinking along the lines of laws, military orders, military government, military occupation, strategic operations, and then also like irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, asymmetrical warfare. You got to learn all those. But once you learn all those and it clicks with you, then you can't really have a bad question. So it's like people probably been seeing me bust the balls of General Flynn lately. Well, someone has to be able to bust a general, good or bad, because a general can be just as defiled as anybody else on the planet. So when you got this general out there that's so popular, and people don't even realize there's like 4,600 retired generals, they don't care about them. But when you got this one general who's full of clout and popular, and everybody just hangs on what he says, that could be dangerous on the other side. And that's how swamps are grown in the polar opposite way. Everybody thinks of the swamp because they're against you or they're different than you. But the liberals out there, they think you're the swamp, and you're not. and our ideologies reflect a greater way of life and a greater way of liberty and a greater way of freedom and a greater way of respect and all those, but they still think that, and they're enemies until they're educated. And there's a way to educate some, there's a way not to. And that ends up being a minority, right? But so many people are looking at certain people out there just hanging on every word they got to say and not studying and reading and then being open to going, hey, you might be following a wolf in sheep's clothing. You know, when President Trump was asked who and what Q is and was, he said, you'd be surprised, and grinned. That's all he said. But Q could have been a plan devised by others that was intercepted by the good guys and integrated into their bigger plan. So I always tell people, like, there's a lot of things going on right now, and there's a lot of shakeup that don't need to be shooken. You don't need to be all shook up right now. And there's still so much of that going on out there with bigger names. And President Trump has hammered most of these people. And you still see a lot of people out there being controlled by some false narrative, and it's not part of the operation. So, you know, there's not really a whole lot of new stuff right now. That it may be new to some people, but it's not new to people that would know that, oh, that's just another notch on the belt. But like, you know, 250 is coming up Saturday. You can't have much. We were talking about this the other day. I was talking about how after July the 4th, you can't have too much discrepancy on President Trump's resume, because if you celebrate this monumental historic feat of 250 years of a republic, not a democracy, but of a republic, and then you have all this other doomsday effect afterwards that some of these people are pumping out there, it would take away from the 250. You wouldn't ever get past it and then go look back and be like, man, that 250 was awesome. Well, we had to go through this other stuff. No, it would diminish it. So we're moving fast right on into the golden age. And I know a lot more people want to see things more visual. I can't lie. I would have loved to see a lot more visual sometimes, but you know, President Trump said our success will be our revenge. Um, Now, I do think you will see certain things, punishment wise, but you got to get majority of the population favoring President Trump. And he just posted a poll up, yesterday or day before, 65% approval. 65% is a massive number based on historic fashion. So if those numbers, which I believe they are already there, but you know, when the election fraud is revealed, Dan Scavino's quote will come back to you where he said, don't let the 10% make you think they're the 90. Well, President Trump's been posting, he posted that photo of Hillary and Joe and
Kim.
Kamala. And, you know, so your average American out there, your average American thinks that Joe won until proven otherwise, is what the ones think he won, and the rest is a lie. And then there's a portion out there that says, well, I think he won until proven otherwise. Well, that's Executive Order 13848. And I was laughing with my friends yesterday. We were sitting there talking, and I was laughing. I was like, literally, I'm like, but it is that simple. It really is this simple. A president, like the military government says, a nation must have a government. It must have. Because if we didn't have a government, it would always be every man for themselves, and every man that has a temper or a short fuse, they would always take the law into their hands. And then you would have groups of people doing the same thing. It would always be rampant. So we got to have a government. But the government of whom? The people. So people, like our Declaration of Independence talks about, And this military government book talks about the Declaration of Independence, but it's like this hairline example where, again, we must have a government, but at the point that the government, meaning other people that we elect into those positions that we don't want to do, at the point that they go awry or become corrupt, that's where the Declaration comes in. It says it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, meaning new government. So you hear people out there, oh, President Trump signed this and he signed this, and most of these documents are fake, first and foremost. No one will be leaking a document ever so historic if there was going to be a new document. That would come straight from the president, all right, in his office. So too many people I saw another someone texted me the other day, can you confirm this document? And I'm like, it's fake, it's false. That's the world of AI. And that's what you got to get used to now. Anything so historic or so monumental will come straight from the president. You got to get on True Social and follow the president. He told you this over and over and over again. That's where he posts, and he doesn't post remotely close to what he posts on Truth. He don't post on X. You got to follow True Social. If it don't come straight from the horse, leave it alone. All right. So all these things that are being shared out there, the president, one, he's not he's a constitutional commander, but he's a commander in chief of a military government. His nominations prove this. His nominations are straight out of President Eisenhower's contingency plan. Now, it was called back then a constitutional dictatorship. Now, that word dictator has been misconstrued and misused by the Democrats for so many times that it scares people, but it's not. A constitutional dictatorship, based on the terminology of Eisenhower, was a contingency plan coming out of a nuclear attack. Now, everybody out there is going to say, well, we haven't had a nuclear attack. Yes, we have. And now, I've put that on record 2 or 3, 4 years ago. I can't remember when that podcast was, but I was explaining the things that people were seeing in DC in 2021 in January. There were people on their balcony filming, and they removed those videos from YouTube, but they were up, and a lot of people back then remember this, especially veterans, but people were filming these videos. And I sent a bunch of them to some buddies of mine. I'm like, you know exactly what that is. That's CRAM. And CRAM is a new technology that the Army has. Marine Corps should also have it. But the CRAM, it knocks out nuclear missiles. It intercepts missiles, but it can also handle nuclear missiles. All right. That's why there's been so much talk about the Golden Dome, which is air and missile defense, which is what my MOS was, all right, in the Army, and also the National Guard at Guard DC. There was an article not long ago talking about, oh, should we do away with $1 million a day security? If it's $1 million a day, I don't think you want to be doing away with that, because that tells you how high risk that is. All right, so there's that. And then also, President Trump was hosting Macron or whoever that was the other day. I had to go back and look. But anyway, the leader gets up and he's got these 3 graphs, and he says, not since Eisenhower has this happened. Well, that's a straight up validation. Not since Eisenhower has this happened. And he was talking about what President Trump had done. So it's a two-way validation. One, what had been done, and then 2, not since Eisenhower. Eisenhower was the one with the contingency plan. And the contingency plan was all based on, back then, men, businessmen, and military men being able to come into positions of government after such attack because of their experience and expertise, but also not only their experience and expertise, but also being able to be ironclad and not letting any infiltration in. And that's why this is a multifaceted operation. Like when President Trump fires somebody, it's okay to fire somebody. You know, the liberals early on, when President Trump started firing people left and right, and you're fired and you're removed, they called that, oh, this disruption in the White House, and oh, he can't do this, and it's failing. No, our government has been set up like a business. It should be ran like a business. They set it up that way. He didn't. 28 U.S. Code, Section 3002 says the United States is a corporation. So if it's set up that way, you should run it that way. If they don't like it that way, they should change it. But see, so many people get into the fiat currency and oh, it's all bad and it's this and that. Well, we got to have some currency. We have to have something, but we have to have something that's backed, meaning that we have something here, but it's only worth what we deem what it's worth. And so many people are overlooking that, and they're getting into what is just bad and don't even know why it's bad. But it could be good, and you're listening to people say it's bad, but why are they doing that? They may have some kind of agenda, right? So we have to have some form of currency. We have to have something that we trade with each other. We have to. Now we don't have to. We can go back to the 1800s, and we could go back to just farming and no AC and no air condition, and just have you a house with a roof, all right, and a bed in it, and just sit on your porch all day and twiddle your thumbs. But we don't have that now. We have businesses. We have man-made systems that we established. And most everybody has your hands tied to that. You have a power bill, you have a mortgage, you have a water bill, you have a cell phone bill, you have things that require an exchange, a trade. And it's gotten so big out there that you can't rip the rug out. So President Trump is this commander of the military, and he's this president over this whole fiscal system of multiple layers and layers of companies. And no one wants to think of that. No one wants to think of all the intricate details of that. No one wants to think of how many it is. Everybody's just listening to just a few little things. You got to look at the massive, broad scheme of things. He's the face of multifaceted operations. And this could not just happen overnight. And that's why it's so genius that if veterans would shut the what up and sit back, because I'm telling you, veterans, if you're still listening out there, any new veterans coming on, if you better shut the what up. You better listen to your brother in arms here, because if you are some high ranking person with a DD 214 that's fully decked out, all right, and you're out there saying this is bull crap, hogwash, and all this other stuff, it's gonna make you look even worse, 100 times worse, because there is strategies and tactics designed in our military law that dates before the Constitution and before the Declaration that allows the authority of a president, when Congress is failing and has failed to do their job, and or has also corrupted their own system and defied and also deceived the people. Military law most certainly says that a president temporarily can override any Congress declaring a war and declare one himself. So see, that's where so many people should it be desired? No, it shouldn't be desired. But guess what? Congress did that. Congress did this in 71 and 73 and all through the 70s, but also 51s when it started, when they put term limits on the president, not themselves. Why would they do that? Now, the Constitution doesn't say anything about term limits, period. So in my opinion, it's against the whole Constitution to have term limits, period. And we should go back to our founders. What did our founders talk about? What did they say? What was their ideology? Well, it's written in the Federalist Papers, 85 of them. So, see, people don't go back and study what our founders intended. When you're in the court of law, you have to prove intent or motives. The whole law is based on intent and motives. Well, what did our founders intend? It's pretty simple. Now, they didn't have the monetary system back then that we have and the corruption that we have, or have had, rather, but they had it in their own kind of way. It just wasn't as rampant, and it wasn't all this build the system that benefits Congress and doesn't benefit people. So that's why when President Trump cusses or says anything that he says, everybody should, whether you're the most Christian, whatever you are out there, you should be almost cussing with him, because he's saying, hey, this is bullcrap. This is all hogwash. Look at the deep state. This is what they did. Follow the money. All the other quotes that people have, just Republicans and conservatives have forgotten about. Not you patriots, but they have forgotten about it. So it's this multifaceted operation. In the military government, these veterans out there, here we go. This is what I was talking to you. You've heard of a military occupation, but you think it's something that when we go into Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, Kosovo, Somalia, Korea, Vietnam, all these places, you call it an occupation because we removed their government. Well, why can't we use the same strategy and tactic on our own government? Oh, we can. That's what the military government talks about. That's what the booklets talk about. That's why in joint publication 3-57, it talks about that generally, no, you don't want Title 10 forces operating with law enforcement. Generally, you don't want to. But there's a but there, and it's a big but. All right. You can all caps it, you can underline it, you can bold it out, you can italicize it. But it says specifically that if Congress deems so or authorizes this. And that's why the Congress can't pass resolution on Iran, because they've already given President Trump the green light to take care of Iran. And that's why those NDAAs are very particular and specific and also important. And that's why I was sharing the post last night about Tim Kaine talking about how Hegseth is acting more personal towards the military, something that he didn't like when he was in, and all these other things. And he's trying to find a bunch of yes men. Well, that's what the military is supposed to be. Military is a rank structure. So everyone under the president should be abiding by whom? The president. The president should be abiding by what? The law of the land, the law of war, and military laws and military regulations. And if he's not doing that, guess who holds him accountable? You do. So see how this is all a joint operation. It's always a joint operation. People must also know what is lawful and what isn't lawful. So it's a rank structure for a reason. So yes, generals, colonels, lieutenant colonels, majors, captains, lieutenants, they should all be following the president, their commander, who appointed them. And then the commanders are supposed to know the law as well. Therefore, when the president goes against the law himself, then not only do the people recognize it, but the commanders are supposed to recognize it. That is where the oath comes in. According to regulation and what it talks about in our oath. According to means according to whatever your regulations are and your laws are. Well, if the president's going against that, then that's not according to. That's when an officer can go, that's an unlawful order. I'm not taking that order. But see, the commanders, the higher up, so like your generals and your colonels and your lieutenant colonels, when you reach lieutenant colonel in the military, that's the first line where a lieutenant colonel can punish someone. They're the ones who have to stand up for the law when it's being broken. Anyone, especially on the enlisted side, if a sergeant major or if a first sergeant, master sergeant, if they say, hey, that's unlawful order, and no one surrounds them in a massive group, then they could be ostracized and alienated. That's how the military was infiltrated. That's why President Trump said the back was broken in the military, and I rebuilt the military. And that's why they've been cleaning out all these ROTCs, the ideology that was being pumped into these commanders. That's why we have all these commanders who are woke. Not anymore. And they're cleaning that out. So this is a massive operation. And so as we approach Saturday, which we're rapidly getting there, I mean, there can't be anything much after that except for the punishment of people. But I think, like I say, I'm just making an educated guess that I'm not in the war room, so I don't know. And the war room would have been decided a long time ago because this is a strategic operation to give President Trump 12 years to do what would have taken 8. You couldn't stop the whole world and educate people that, well, Article 2 doesn't say anything about term limits, and the Constitution doesn't say anything about this, and the this don't say. You couldn't do that. They had to implement it, roll with it, and then kind of like that saying, ask forgiveness later. But when we get done with this operation, nobody will be asking for forgiveness because the 12 years will be unblemishable and it will unveil everything that needs to be unveiled, such as what we were talking about a while ago, Kamala, Joe, and Hillary. They had to use faces and they had to use puppets because if you didn't have that, you would have had a clear answer, but you wouldn't have won over majority of the people. The whole goal of this is to get people on one accord, all Americans, because the liberals have been brainwashed on their side of things. And it's no different than like enemies of countries, like Iranians. They've been told their whole life from child up that we're enemies, especially the males, the ones that get recruited to the military. They get told from a child up. They're brainwashed from a child up that we're enemies and that we're seeking to destroy them and we don't, agree with their lifestyles and all these other things. They get told all this stuff from a child up. And what's the Bible talk about? All you Christians out there, what's the Bible say? Train up a child in the way that he should go and he won't depart. When you start putting stuff into a child's mind at a young age that's bad, they're going to grow up that way. And they're innocent from the standpoint of they were brainwashed by someone evil. So see, liberals are the same way. They all preach about, oh, the Constitution, we got to protect the Constitution. They can't name a single line from the Constitution. They call us a democracy. We're not a democracy. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution says we're a republic. So, I mean, it's the little simple things. Federalist Paper number 10 talks about pure democracies and how dangerous they are. They don't believe it. And it's like, you don't believe in the Federalist Papers? The sole author of the Constitution you claim to support is one of the authors of 80 of 85 Federalist Papers. You don't believe in those? It's the same writer, same author, same person, same man. So see, when you look at the bigger picture, people where we are right now, you got to always remember what the goal was and what the goal is and what the end goal is going to be. And so many lose their way when you get comfortable. You start branching out, listening to a bunch of other flapping gums out there. And there's a lot of faces and names because the internet has made apps. That's what the age we live in. It's just everybody's got a name, everybody's got a face, everybody wants a name, everybody wants a face, but they're not reading what they're supposed to be reading and studying what they're supposed to be studying. Because if I was the president, which is not going to happen, but if I were, I'd shut down the internet. We'd find out how many people could survive old school. And we wouldn't have faces and names. We'd go back to going, okay, here's your leaflet in your mailbox, and this is what's going on, and you can read it, and you can be brought up to date this way if you want to know. But we're not in that era. And that's why President Trump said, we got to get the people what they want. Well, people want drama. That's what people want. They want drama. So you give them stammering Joe, make him stumble all over the stage. I mean, it was a perfect setup. And it'll be in movies later and shows later, and it'll be able to, you'll be able to, they'll be able to go back and watch all this stuff and see how, you know, I won't use the word dumb, but we'll just say naive they were. How could they not see this the whole time? And then something like a law, Executive Order 13848. Why, if I hated someone, and I hate using the word hate, but if I hated someone and they were my rival and they were my competition and they preceded me, and here I come in there and I'm like, okay, they passed this, and it's doing this, and it's doing this. Well, Executive Order 13848 absolutely proves the puppet government. It absolutely 100% proves it. There's no argument to it. Because if Joe Biden had the same power as, let's don't even use President Trump, let's just use someone else. If Joe Biden had the same power as Bill Clinton, George Bush, Ronald Reagan, Abraham Lincoln, then he had the same authority and power to revoke an executive order that needed a revocation, or if it had a national emergency attached to it, it automatically terminates if you don't give it any attention, meaning you don't continue it. It just automatically terminates. That is in the clause of law. So why would Joe Biden continue Executive Order 13848 with a national emergency 4 years in a row? That's the very executive order that preceded President Trump federalizing the National Guard and the reserve components to active duty, which also included the National Guard that were watching all elections 2018, 2020, 2022, and 2024. Why would quote unquote Joe continue an executive order that is capturing in real time the fraud of elections? And then in turn, January 20, 2025, in turn, that would be your intern, hand that right back to President Trump alive and active and continue. And then in turn, call him a king, a Nazi, and a dictator. Get the you know what out of here. It's that simple. That one order proves it all, because now you're seeing President Trump talk about election interference in California. He's already cleaned out Nevada and Michigan and Virginia and Pennsylvania, all the states that he had a court case with, the 7 swing states that he quote unquote lost in 2020. He won the same 7 swing states in 2024. No other time in the United States election history were the same swing states of the previous election the same the next one. I mean, you can just keep adding up all these quote unquote coincidences. And now all of a sudden Obama's brought back into the picture. Now, Michelle and Obama to all the people out there, Big Mike, and they're all being brought back into the scene heavily with this presidential library. And oh, he's a family man, and oh, the letters. Oh, I wrote 10 letters a week every day to these kids, and yada yada yada, all this other stuff. That's being presented on Obama's page. Yet James Comey, very vital to Obama, hasn't posted anything in over a year on his X account. Why? if he's free to roam, and why isn't anybody in his defense? Why isn't Obama or any of them talking about him? Hey, he's free, he's innocent, leave him alone. So see, you got to do the hairline again. What I call it the hairline, because you have to think very critically, easy but critically. Is that Obama's post that he's making has to be done, because if he disappeared, then there'd be questions by everybody. Where did he go? He was very active on X. Where'd he go? But the posts he's making are not defending Big Mike. I mean, come on, ladies. You're ladies out there. Ladies, most real women, real ladies, you want a protective man. You want a man who will fight for you. You want a man who will speak up for you, defend your honor, defend your name, defend whatever's being said about you. You want a man who's a man, right? If all of a sudden some big burly guy, muscled up dude gets on world TV and says that your wife is a dude, all right, your wife has a set of balls, I'm pretty sure you want your man with his set of balls to defend you. To come out there and be like, my wife is a woman. Michelle, my wife, Michelle, is a woman. Full-fledged woman. She has a hoo-ha, right? She has no balls, right? You would want your man to do that. Why hasn't Obama said anything about that? If he's free to post, why hasn't he addressed that? The old swamp did that. The old swamp loved controversy. They loved it because that's what brought publicity. That's what made their numbers go up. And especially if those numbers were in their favor, because new numbers, anyone that was new, they may have discovered their new book out or whatever, maybe they had a product out or a book out. It was publicity. And any new numbers that came to their defense, but had not been in their defense before, that was new numbers for them. That's how they made their money, and that's how they made their publicity, and that's how they made more money and more living and more houses and more cars and more this. So the post that Obama's making, anybody could be sitting over there doing that, which is what's taking place. But the real Obama, who was very vocal towards President Trump when he was doing the reading of the tweets, you see me post that all the time where he'll go, at real Donald Trump. It says, Barack Obama will go down as the worst president in history. And Barack goes, well, at real Donald J. Trump, at least I will go down as a president. Ooh, yeah, you're going to go down all right in two different ways. All right, we won't talk about the other one, but you can ask Big Mike. The other thing is he will go down, meaning like, hey, he's going down. He's correct about that. You got to go back to Clint Eastwood. What did Clint Eastwood say? He was the biggest fraud ever perpetrated on the American people. All right, so that was an inadvertent admission of what was coming in the future when Barack Hussein did that. Old Barry did that. So when you look at X is a captured operation. Palantir, people are always asking me, I'm still getting people to asking me about Palantir, and I've broken that down a million times, but Palantir, the little blue check on X, used to, you had to be someone prominent. You had to have X amount of followers and also be known to people to get a blue check. Now it's $7 per month. Some schmuck in West Virginia could, have 2 followers and get a blue check, right? You ain't got to be anybody prominent anymore. So the blue check, that is your Palantir connection, and that's your Elon Musk, your Space Force, all right? And then the communications of the Space Force were transferred out of the Army and the Navy to the Space Force. So President Trump, when he praises the Space Force, it's communications heavily. And then the Palantir all of a sudden has been commissioning guys who've never been in the military, but they're tech guys. They're very, very, very smart and intelligent. And they're getting to skip all these ranks and go straight in because it's kind of like the Space Force. When they established the Space Force, they went back to former Air Force guys, which can be dangerous because there's some dumb ones out there like I've encountered in the past. But they go back to former Air Force guys first and then say, hey, they'll go to one's active duty and say, hey, look, we need officers. You'll go through this 4-week program, 5 week sped up, rushed process if you want to be an officer in the Space Force. Well, a lot of Air Force guys didn't want to go in the Space Force because they made fun of it. Some didn't. All right. And that's why it's hit or miss. You're going to get an occasional bad apple out of that because it's an, something extracurricular and a sped up process. And especially if they were enlisted and are getting to go over to officer, then you're going to have guys that think they're bigger than what they are. There's all kinds of things, but overall, predominantly, you get a lot of good out of it. So same thing. All right. So Space Force and all the communications. Well, Elon Musk, he's been replaced. You can look at old Elon, look at the new Elon. They're not the same dude, but it's all part of the operation, captured operation. So Palantir comes in. All right. They're getting all these guys. Well, it's still under whom? President Trump. So you either trust him or you don't. If you don't, you need to go ahead and jump ship. Go ahead and leave. But all this flipping and flopping and riding the fence don't cut it either. Even the Bible tells you that. Get off the fence. All right. The fence is also your compromising too. So get off the fence, get on one side and stay on your side. Pick your side, choose it wisely. But Palantir, it talks about two key terms and two was four key terms, but it's two terms each sentence of the main article in Palantir. It says compiling data from existing contracts. Existing means they already have your information. So you'll hear people out there, oh, I don't want to have our information. They already have your information. It says compiling data from existing contracts. So therefore, you have two options. Either you trust President Trump and you want the new option to be handling information correctly, which is pulling out all of your frauds and all the different people who weren't supposed to be here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Or do you want the old swamp back? Because that's where the data was. That's where it was housed to begin with. So see, there's so many operations going on that it's really hard in another way to have an hour and a half discussion without it sound like a rambling conversation. But that's where we are. And when you move to July the 4th, anything past July the 4th and a 250 and what the overall goal is and was for the American public and people, all of us, was to move towards unity. So you can't have any doomsday effects after that. And there's so many people out there, they're talking about it. Oh, it's like all that. The only time I've ever mentioned the emergency alert system is anything good. Because I don't think that you can. I personally think that it would destroy America if you do a doomsday, any kind of event after Saturday or even during Saturday. It would diminish our history. So I've always mentioned emergency alert as an educational piece because it would be a way to get everybody on one page because everybody's phone and TVs and internet would flip over, but it would have to be educational. And I think that would come at the punishment level, meaning like if they were going to do anything but most people would be praising getting rid of corruption. It wouldn't be a doomsday thing to see Barack Hussein or Hillary or George Soros or any of them going through a military tribunal. That would not be a doomsday effect. It would be an educational piece. And so if they could get 75 to 80%, 80-20 rule of the nation leaning with President Trump, whether they're full fledged on board or just leaning, 80-20 rule would be perfect. And then you could drop the hammer on like the Department of Justice and all of what you're seeing. Caroline Levitt talking about the DOJ, that they're letting the DOJ handle all the talks about Obama and all these things. So, everybody should be sitting back, chilling one day at a time, but not also getting frantic or also jumping shit with President Trump just because you haven't seen anything yet. you got to look at the historic value of it. And the historic value of it is when 200 and 300 years down the road, when we're all dead and gone. But see where you're sitting right now, when you look back on history, those are the few that do. How do you judge certain generals if you know about them? How do you judge certain leaders if you know about them? And Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, I think it was those two. I may be wrong on one of them, but there were two of them that had a slight discrepancy because one of them was a realist, another one wasn't so much a realist. One of them said that he believed that people would judge history based on where they're sitting at that moment. The other believed that people would always be looking forward and moving America forward always based on liberty and freedom of our founders. Now, I can see both of those. I see both perspectives because people do look back in history and they'll judge people. I've heard the liberals 3 or 4 years ago trying to destroy Christopher Columbus. Oh, he was a womanizer and he owned slaves. They all owned slaves back then, you retards. All right. That was a part of life back then. Right, good, bad, wrong, indifferent doesn't matter. Now, people want to look back on history and be a judge. So there's the one ideology. And the other was what I do. It's like, well, you're supposed to look at like a Native American. They look 7 generations out. So you're living life today for your seventh generation forward. And then when that seventh generation gets here, they look back. And if you were doing everything, every person, every man and woman in every slot of life was doing everything you're supposed to be doing for the greater good of humanity and the greater good of your neighbor and the greater good of your family and your friends, etc., then that history and that past would look the way it's supposed to. And that's not looked that way the last 150 years in America with your uh, organic acts of 1870s and moving forward. Now it got really bad after JFK. That's when it really ramped up. But I see both viewpoints. And it's okay to see both viewpoints because that's what makes you a middle person, a middleman, right? Where you can see both. And then when you're a middleman, you can meet people in the middle. You could go, I get yours and I get yours. So here's what we do. All right. We can work with these two. Right? We can work with your ideology and your ideology. Y'all quit arguing with each other. We can work both on this. But see, that's where we are. It's like liberals, they think you're the enemy. You think they're the enemy. Well, they may actually be the enemy, depending on what they're believing. But most of them don't even know what they believe because they haven't been taught anything and they don't study anything. They don't read anything. And they're just a product of having too much freedom, meaning they're only as free as their surroundings allow them to be. Well, when you got ideologies like me, gay people can walk around, they're not going to be bothered. But when they want to go down to the schoolhouse or they want to go down to the town hall and say a bunch of nonsense, then that's when they had to be put in their place. Right? Going, oh, you sound stupid. You really do. Hate to use that term, but you sound it. All right. But we have to get control of all that. And that's what's been taking place. And that's why President Trump, one man on the totem pole, he takes all the heat no matter what, because so many people where they are not reading, studying, comprehending, or applying what needs to be applied. And that's like the military government book. I highly recommend it. Again, I'll post a photo of it again, but I highly recommend purchasing it and reading it and breaking it down and studying it, no matter how long it takes you. Don't worry about the speed of things, but comprehending it because it talks about these things. It talks about your ideology. America is an ideology, and we got to fight for it every single day. And at the point you stop and celebrate, that's when the enemy sneaks in on you. So if you have too much freedom daily and you take your freedom for granted, guess what's going to happen? Someone's going to sneak in there and they're going to use the term freedom against you and make it look like you, but they're actually doing something polar opposite. And that's why we ended up with a swamp. What the swamp did is they made their own system. They created their own system. If you were born in it, if you were one of their children, you were good. because you were born into their system. You had their judges, their lawyers, and if you got in trouble, whatever, you got out of it. You got to go to the greatest schools scot free. Didn't have to study much. They were like, oh, that's so and so's son, and blah blah blah. He'll be all right once he gets out. You know, all that nonsense. And that's how they made Americans inferior to them. And you didn't question them, and you weren't supposed to question them. And Americans didn't know the law, didn't question the law, didn't know what laws were being passed. And here we are. And that's why you got to have disruptors. People like me, a disruptor, an iconoclast, going, well, I don't care about your system. Screw your system. Your system only benefits you. It doesn't benefit everybody. And if you look at President Trump, the left thinks that he and his way of life is an inferiority. And now he's like, no, it's a merit based. Now, there's still going to be ranks and there's still going to be tiers. But even in President Trump's system, some people don't want to be the president. Some people don't want to be a representative. Some people don't want to be a senator. Some people don't want to be custodian. Some people don't want to be a secretary of this or that or that. Some people want to be where they are. And the tier system still works, but in President Trump's kind of tier system, everybody gets treated with respect and dignity, but also has a merit-based system that if they do want to grow and they do want to move up the ladder, they can. And it'll be everybody's to each their own, meaning a true each their own. Everybody can stay in their lane if they want to. But if you want to work up the lane, it will be merit-based and recognized by people. And that's where people also have to become unselfish. If someone's smarter than you, it don't mean they're better than you. It just means they want more or want to achieve more, and you should promote that person. That's what a buddy of mine was talking about the other day. He's a songwriter, and he's a legendary songwriter. And we were talking about that country music system now is not based on merit. And that's what I'm trying to be explaining to people here recently. It's the same swamp. Country music system is the same swamp. So if you're supporting it, you're supporting the swamp. It's a managed democracy. They make you think you're choosing your buffet, but the buffet was already laid out in front of you. Here's this artist, this singer, this singer, this singer. And then they make you like the song. And then because you pick it and you like it, you think that you discovered it. You did not discover it. You didn't discover it. It's a managed democracy where it's a complete totalitarianism control. They make you think you discovered it, but they're capturing and controlling you. Versus, hey, a guy like me, I write all my songs solo. I'm a solo writer. I do write with hit writers occasionally, but I write all mine. I produce all my music. So you can discover me. I'm not being shoved down your throat by corporate America. But what a look at country, look at fans out there. What are they doing? My new song right now, America's Back, it's got 5,000, almost 6,000 views in a week. That's pathetic. But it shows that fans out there are still captured in control. But they don't want to know. So why wouldn't they want to support a veteran who's solo writes, who's independent, who's beaten the system and has Billboard hits without a major record label? Why wouldn't they want that? Majority of those country music fans are what? They love the military, they claim. They claim they love veterans. They claim they love the small man, but they don't. They support the big man. But they support the big man corporate system, not President Trump, who says, I know how to destroy the system and make every one of you wealthy if you want to be wealthy. But it's merit-based, meaning it's still on you. It's like a golfer. You can't blame your swing on someone else. A golfer is solely on you, what you do on the course. There's nothing you can do on a golf course. You can't go out there and someone be like, hey, man, you're going to do good today. You're going to swing good today. You're going to, man, no, there's nothing no one can say. You have to perform. It's merit based. And that's what President Trump, that's a difference in President Trump and his wealth and what he's establishing, and the disruptor and iconoclast, even though he was set up by the military. There's no way he could have done any of this without the military. And he knows that. That's not a discrepancy on him, but it's a setup. That's why, again, there's strategy and tactics of irregular and unconventional warfare that allows this to take place. That's why it's so humorous when you hear people out there saying this bullcrap, conspiracy, and all this other stuff. It's straight up military tactics, military strategies. And it's not a constitutional dictatorship the wrong way. It's a military government that is supported by the Constitution. It's not a constitutional government straight out the gate. It's supported by the Constitution. So there's all these layers out there that people just have to peel back. It's like an onion, you have to peel it back. And it depends on how far you want to peel the onion and what part of the onion you want to know about. But Iran, taken care of. You know, they play this little cat and mouse game and all that. And some of it may be still to find out who's going to, say what against President Trump. But even military government talks about that. I mean, it talks about these things. It sets up people. I was just posting that earlier. Maybe we'll pull it up really quick and read it about that. But I was talking about, right here. It says, if after military government is set up over them, the people attempt to leave the district to join the enemy, they will be repressed with the utmost vigor. Well, that's just saying right there that Mitt Romney, Mitt Romney did that. Thomas Massey did that. All these people that President Trump has hammered, they have joined the enemy. Tucker Carlson, I'm leaving the Republican Party. I can't be a part of this. But again, they're teaching people all along the way. Let's say that half of Tucker's audience goes with him. Guess what they're going to have? They're going to have a massive burn, because when they show the actual numbers of the executive order 13848, the actual election numbers, even if half the people ran with Tucker, there's still not as many Democrat liberals voting out there as they have made people think in their set up corrupt system. So they're okay with taking out some guy like Tucker who's all facade and all show and all mouth, because he's part of a what? A managed democracy. Fox News is a managed democracy. It has a syndicated, captured audience. See, no one ever wants to look at who owns Fox News. Everybody just looks at Fox News because they're captured by what? TV. And then what does what? Tickles their fancy, as the saying is. Well, naturally, Tucker and all these people get on TV, even Sean Hannity. They'll get on there and they'll tell you what you want to hear. Now, some of them may be good when they go home, when they walk off of that set and that screen. But it's just like I tell people all the time, when I close my phone after this podcast, guess what I'm doing? I'm nose in a book reading military government, making sure that, it's like the Bible. Anytime you open the Bible, you can read the Bible over and over and over again. But every time you read it, you're going to see something different because you're at a different stage in your life. You may have gone through something different that you never experienced before. And a Bible verse will speak a different way towards your setup or scenario. Well, same thing with military government booklets and military laws and precedents. There's so many of them, the variables that we're talking about, that when you open it up, you're going to read something differently that'll apply differently to what President Trump's doing right now versus what he did 8 years ago. So see, that's why I tell people, when you shut this phone off, now I do have times of going to the beach occasionally, not often. It's the first time I've been to one in 4 years. But 3 or 4 years, somewhere in there. But the times that I do get to do something like this, even right here, I've been reading Military Government Booklet again and the Book of Enoch by John Enlow. All right. So even on my downtime, I'm reading. I'm doing something productive that adds to the equation. All right. And that's what every American family household has to do. Even in your downtime, you should be reading the Constitution. You should be reading the Declaration. You should be reading a Federalist paper. You don't have to read them all at one time, but you should be doing something productive. And a lot of these podcasters out there, when they close that screen off, they're done. They're done till the next day or the next 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever it is, however their routine. They're not reading and studying President Trump's plan. They're not reading and studying the laws and orders that he's just put into place, invocation wise. So when you boil it down, it's not that many out there. And that's why there's not many veterans out there. Because a lot of veterans don't want to name, they don't want to face, they don't want to deal with the emails, the communication, all the riffraff and all the security and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it is going to be a small number, but at the same time, every bit of what I talk about reflects back on President Trump, and every bit of what I talk about always has a validation point. Every bit of it. And this week's been a week of validations. Since Eisenhower comment and all kinds of other things been taking place. So you just have to just realize there's a bigger picture, and you got to always look out at the bigger picture. And what is the goal? What are our goals? What are our mission accomplished? Um, and I know everybody wants to see, punishment. Everybody wants to see arrest and all. You have all these people. Oh, nothing changes until we see this. No, nothing changes until you learn to prevent what took place. Nothing changes until that. Um, so anyway, I'll probably air it out unless you have a specific question.
Oh no,
But
you did great. I love listening to you. I just kick back and I'm like, and I'm over here. When you said validation, it's been a week full of validation. I'm like, woohoo, good job, way overdue, well deserved, and keep doing the great work, Derek. We're really proud of you. Many of us, I know, me for sure, and many of my audience members. So keep it up. Do you want to take a couple questions, maybe? Because I know you said you had to end it. Do you need to go, or can you tell me? Do you have to go now, or is it at 5:30 right on the dot?
well, is it?
You
Let's see. It's 10 after 5. Yeah. So do
you
you
tell
have any
me.
questions? I mean,
Well, I wanted to see, had to, and see what your thought process and kind of. I know you kind of talked a little bit about what's coming up here on the 4th of July and everything. We've got 5 days. The White House is posting that 5 days till. What do you think that looks like? Obviously, it's a big celebration, all that kind of stuff. But moving forward after that, like I know you touched on it a little bit, but do you have any more to it than that, or is that kind of what you're thinking? How it's coming, in your opinion, how it's going to go?
well, I don't really know. I mean, I've you have a lot of key dates after that. I mean, naturally, that always revolve every year, but like you have your September 17th, Constitution Day. You have a lot of other days in between the actual election. That everybody's been talking about the election in November and will there be one and all this again. I'm like, well, everybody asked that about 2024, and I'm like, oh yeah, there was a 2024 election, and why will we not? Um, so President Trump posted something today, or the White House did, and Department of Education posted it, the White House reposted. That's what it was, and it's President Trump walking around and he's taking stabs at Joe Biden again. So I'm like, you think Joe would have done this? Does he know where he is and what he's doing and all this? It's just making all these humorful jokes, but you know, the law still shows we're in a continuity government, a partial, which means we're in a partial military government, which means we're still in the restoration phases of that. So, what will that look like? I don't know. President Trump and the powers that be that set this all up have been very ironclad about it, which is cool. Because that was what goes back to again. He deserves the prestige, the clout, the praise, the everything for putting his name, face, and brand and image on this. Right? Someone had to. So that's why I tell people, like, like you see these, someone's out there spewing, and it's a pretty well known platform talking about, oh, this signature ended it all. And it's like, every bit of President Trump ended it all. It's not one signature that ended it all. President Trump rolling down the escalator ended it all. And so everybody wants that, like, holy grail of what it's going to be. I'm like, they've made this pretty ironclad that only a few actually know. And even someone like Dan Scavino never alludes to anything, and he's one of his right hand guys. So I think it's just the element of surprise, and that's what makes it great. Because if I knew ahead of time, I'm the kind of person that, um, you can tell me the ending of a movie, and it won't stop me from watching it if I want to watch it, and it won't ruin it. But some people out there, you say, "Hey, season 5 ends this way," and they're like, "Oh my god, you just wrecked my world," you know. And and sometimes I do that on purpose. When I do know that, when it's someone I don't like, I've done that before. I'm like, "Hey, by the way, so and so dies at the end." So, but but it's like, it's the element of surprise, and I think that's what everybody should focus on, instead of, so many Americans, not patriots, no, and I'm not saying anybody in this group listening, but so many Americans do. They're always just anticipating something, and it may not be anything. And I think that's dangerous in a lot of ways too, just because of what happens with the element of surprise, right? And President Trump deserves that. And he's 80 now, and we all know my dad was 83 when he passed. And your 80s are precious years. Most people don't get to their 90s and their hundreds. Um, so the glory days of President Trump, the real President Trump, in his setting, deserves to see that exoneration on all levels, not just patriots. Because in reality, I mean, let's see how many's listening right now. 128, which we moved this
Well,
up to a
no,
different time,
you got a
somewhere in
lot
there.
more
But
over. You've got more over here on Rumble Live and X Live, so we're almost sitting about
well,
600.
let's just say, but when you take 600 out of the population of the U.S. of 350 million, I mean, you're a small number, which is great. That's not a bad thing. I'm just saying it's great for one reason, but it's a small number, meaning that while I talk the way I talk, and the angle of which I just, like, I break down things. I always talk as if new people are listening, because you're a small number. But when you get to the average American out there that has no idea of one single law right now in votes, then
Yep.
you got to think of that, right? So you listening, you're a patriot. You're far beyond. You're way beyond these average Americans, right? So they're looking at Saturday as going to the lake, going to a river, going to a get together, a barbecue or whatever. They're still not in the mindset of what you're in, where you're going, hey man, like if you're at a barbecue and you're like, hey, you ever read Executive Order 13848? They're looking at you like, dude, I'm trying to drink a beer and enjoy the day here, right? That's the average mindset out there, right? And that's what's got to flip in the future. But that's not going to flip overnight. But that's what's got to flip in our colleges and our high schools and our schools again. And that's going to take time. So, right now it's kind of more like what President Trump says, give the people what they want. Well, the people are going to want fireworks, uh, a party on Saturday, and, patriots and Republicans, conservatives are going to want to see jets and ammunition, like that. They want to see all that kind of stuff. They want to see, like, you know, vehicles that are not your typical vehicle. They want to see artillery. They want to see some, display. So I don't think it's going to be anything in particular like some people are saying out there. I think it's going to be, a bigger party than what was in 20, was it 20, what year was that President Trump had that massive display? Was it 2020 or somewhere in there?
Yeah.
He had the liberals all stirred up, and he had all the aircraft and all that's taxpayer dollars being wasted and all
Yep.
those stuff. I'm like, yeah, you don't even pay it, but you're whining. Uh, but So I think it's going to be more of that. And also, I put it on record a few years ago that maybe, I don't know, but I did hear that there were going to be a bunch of submarines and ships coming over. I said way back that all the ships in the Mediterranean and all the different ships all over that were coming, they were, oh, the Chinese are coming to get us and all this other stuff. When they were saying that, the Russians are out there and they were saying it was off the coast of Florida. I'm like, I think they're getting those ships. What if they brought all the ships from other nations in a celebration? What if all your media crews and camera crews are going to be panning out to all these different militaries that are celebrating with us? I mean, it could be something astronomical like that. Could be. Because there are a lot of ships that are in the region. If you look at the radar and different things. So it could be something like that. Who knows? But that would be cool and that would be unique and that would be different. And it would display also all the nations who are with us. There's not many that aren't, but it could be something like that. I don't know. I guess we're going to find out. But I know one thing, they don't tell anybody ahead of time, even if you are somebody. No one really knows. Siggy Flicker, all these, but no one knows. President Trump and his few people. So
And that makes sense. Well, Derek, I know you have to go, sweetie, and thank you for everything you're doing. And I mean, the validation is coming. Like I said, well deserved. You deserve it. Many
uh,
do out there because so many of us have been talking the same language. And but you, I know, have given a lot of people a lot of education, a lot of hope. So keep up the great work and enjoy your time in Florida. And we'll see you back here in 2 weeks.
I should be around. It'll be definitely it'll be post the fourth, so we'll see
Yeah.
what happens. So
That's right. Maybe we'll have a lot more to talk about. I mean, we have a lot to talk about now. Maybe we'll just have a lot more excitement. So, with that, everybody, uh, that's it for the shows for today. Come back on Wednesday, or actually maybe tomorrow with Rick Anson. But Wednesday, we're going to have probably a good 4 shows. Captain Kyle's coming on, Alpha Warrior. We've got Silk, and then John Baxter trying to get him on from today on over Wednesday. So, watch for the lineup, everybody. It's out there, but I'm having to change a little bit. So God bless you, Derek. We'll see you soon. And everybody here, God bless you. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for your participation and always being a part of the Revival of America. 'Cause remember, everybody, without you, the Revival of America wouldn't be. So God bless everybody. Take care, Derek. We'll talk soon.
happy fourth, everyone.
Oh, yes. Happy 4th, everybody. Because I won't,
Happy.
well, yeah, I'll see you guys on Wednesday, but Derek won't see you until 2 weeks. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Derek.
We'll see you.
Bye.